You have to have a different sense of time than just going back to 1850. And that's what these people are doing. They're saying that beginning in 1850, we started using fossil fuels, and now there's a climate crisis because of that. It's complete balderdash. There's nothing to it. It is a hollow husk of an idea, and it is being perpetrated by politicians who want a scare story to get the vote. And so 80% of all science research in the United States is in universities. In these universities, you cannot get a grant about climate unless you are on the scare story side. It just won't happen. No, not only that, you will be ostracized by your peers and sent out with a pitchfork in your rear end if you do such a thing as to counter the narrative, as they like to call it. So we're stuck in this situation where all this negative information and scare stories are being fed to the politicians so they can use them to make fear in the public, to control the public. And that's what this is. It's just like, in a way, like COVID. It's a totally different situation, but they did everything they could to make us afraid during COVID instead of giving us hope. And they denigrated us and our children, and they broke the golden rule of medicine, which is do no harm, and that everybody has a right to informed consent before having medical treatment of any kind, whether it's a needle or a drug or a surgery. You have a right to refuse that under the law of medicine. But they've just thrown that out the window altogether, in the same way as they've thrown out rational thought about climate out the window, and are saying now that they have a crystal ball, which is obviously a mythical object and doesn't actually exist. They have a crystal ball that can predict the future of the Earth's climate, and it is very, very, very bad. And all of you are going to die if you don't do what we say. And that's basically what they're getting away with. And they're getting away with doing something now. They're going into agriculture and threatening to cut off the supply of food because food is causing global warming. And, oh, isn't that nice? Only the billionaires will be able to afford to buy food, and all the other people will die, and because there's not enough food. That's what we're heading for if we continue to listen to these people.
I thank the chairman and the ranking members for the opportunity to offer testimony today. Prior to 2009, I felt that supporting the IPCC consensus on climate change was a responsible thing to do. I bought into the argument, don't trust what one scientist says, trust what an international team of 1,000 scientists has said after years of careful deliberation. That all changed for me in November 2009 following the leaked ClimateGate emails that illustrated the sausage making and even bullying that went into building the consensus. I started speaking out, saying that scientists needed to do better at making the data and supporting information publicly available, being more transparent about how they reach conclusions, doing a better job of assessing uncertainties, and actively engaging with scientists having minority perspectives. The response of my colleagues to this is summed up by the title of a 2010 article in the Scientific American. Climate heretic Judith Curry turns on her colleagues. I came to the growing realization that I had fallen into the trap of groupthink. I had accepted the consensus based on second-order evidence, the assertion that a consensus existed. I began making an independent assessment of topics in climate science that had the most relevance to policy. And what have I concluded from this assessment? Human-caused climate change is a theory in which the basic mechanism is well understood, but whose magnitude is highly uncertain. No one questions that surface temperatures have increased overall since 1880, or that humans are adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, or that carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases have a warming effect on the planet. However, there is considerable uncertainty and disagreement about the most consequential issues, whether the warming has been dominated by human causes versus natural variability, how much the planet will warm in the 21st century, and whether warming is dangerous. The central issue in the scientific debate on climate change is the extent to which the recent and future warming is caused by humans versus natural climate variability. Research effort and funding has focused on understanding human causes of climate change. However, we have been misled in our quest to understand climate change by not paying sufficient attention to natural causes of climate variability, in particular from the sun and from the long-term oscillations in ocean circulations. Why do scientists disagree about climate change? The historical data is sparse and inadequate. There's disagreement about the value of different classes of evidence, notably the value of global climate models. There's disagreement about the appropriate logical framework for linking and assessing the evidence. And scientists disagree over assessments of areas of ambiguity and ignorance. How then and why have climate scientists come to a consensus about a very complex scientific problem that the scientists themselves acknowledge has substantial and fundamental uncertainties? Climate scientists have become entangled in an acrimonious political debate that has polarized the scientific community. As a result of my analyses that challenge IPCC conclusions, I have been called a denier by other climate scientists, and most recently by Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. My motives have been questioned by Representative Grijalva in a recent letter sent to the president of Georgia Tech. There is enormous pressure for climate scientists to conform to the so-called consensus. This pressure comes not only from politicians, but from federal funding agencies, universities and professional societies, and scientists themselves who are green activists. Reinforcing this consensus are strong monetary, reputational, and authority interests. In this politicized environment, advocating for carbon dioxide emissions reductions is becoming the default, expected position for climate scientists. This advocacy extends to the professional society that publish journals and organize conference. Policy advocacy, when combined with understating the uncertainties, risks destroying science's reputation for honesty and objectivity, without which scientists become regarded as merely another lobbyist group. I would like to thank the committee for raising the issue of data versus dogma in support of improving the integrity of climate science. This concludes my testimony.
Thank you, Senator Markey. Senator Nelson.
Dr. Carey wanted to respond to Senator.
Is it possible for me to respond? You basically.
I did not ask for ask you a question.
Really? Why can't she respond, Senator?
Dr. Curry,
you impugned her integrity. I think she's entitled.
You are welcome to respond, Dr.
I was basically called a denier that I'm denying science. Did you read my written testimony? Are you aware that the IPCC and the consensus has no explanation for the increase of ice in the Antarctic? Are you aware that they have no explanation for the fact that the rate of sea level rise from 1920 to 1950 was as large, if not larger, as it currently is? Are you aware that temperatures have been warming for more than 200 years and that in the 20th century, 40% of the warming occurred before 1950 when carbon dioxide was not a factor in the warming? Okay, and I could go on and on. Many of these issues are raised in my written testimony, and most of it is pulled from the IPCC itself. The IPCC has an explanation for, so it says, for warming during the period 1975 to 2000. It doesn't have an explanation for the flat period since 2000. It doesn't have an explanation for the early century.
As I just said in my testimony, corroborated by Dr. Titley, this is the warmest year ever recorded. Last year is the warmest year ever recorded until this year. This is the warmest November ever recorded. October is the warmest October ever recorded. You do not have an answer for that, Dr. May.
Yes.
You continue to ignore the chart which Dr. Titley has over his left shoulder. He has documented for this committee the warming trend, which is inexorable, inevitable in terms of its consequences unless we take action here. That's the science you're having a hard time in responding to.
The issue
here,
is
Dr.
what is causing the warming. Is it natural variability or is it humans?